and she was instrumental in securing that grant for me to travel to almost 8 universities in the country, looking at their funding frameworks, etc. Distinguished guests and my fellow attendees, I'm humbled to be in your presence today, and thank you for the opportunity. All right, so I'm going to quickly cover like a fact sheet, a UKZN case study, which I've got from my II people, institutional intelligence folk, the benefits of funding, and some of the questions that we raised. I'll try to be very diplomatic in my approach, as we all collegial in a way. And what if we upset the norms that's currently on the ground? Okay, so in a fact sheet, if you look at this kind of slide, it tells you that almost 80% of UKZN undergraduate students are funded by NSFAS, and that's almost 27,000 of them. Sadly, but you get a 30% dropout, and technically, you'd say 8,100 students were wasteful in a sense, not irregular, but wasteful. And therein lies a big question about why did they drop out? What is the university doing, and what kind of research that needs to go into this? And Mr. President, I was thinking along these lines of using minimum time or minimum time plus 1. Now that's fantastic. That tells you that there are deserving students out there that are hungry for education and are doing everything in their power to graduate. And if you have a chance, have a look at the humanities or the University of KwaZulu-Natal's graduation ceremony, and you'll see the joy in the parents and the guardians. Sadly, though, we get a return on investment with the 56%. However, Tashni earlier spoke about NSFAS, NRF funding honors study. 7,000 of them sadly drop out, and they don't go into postgrad. Now that is a challenge on its own, and even that is a study on its own. So if there's anyone here want to collaborate together, different universities, students from different sectors want to do research, this is a study that's going to inform policy. Okay, so we're going to look at what the benefits of funding a deserving student. And I'm just going to cover each one of those. Next slide, please. All right, so look at personal growth. I was actually stunned when the CFO was speaking, because so much of my presentation covered what she said. And program director, you talked about repetition, and you want to hear this as a repetitive platform. So from a personal growth perspective, what are the benefits? It comes back to a story that I was engaging my Dean of Research as we were traveling to meet the High Commissioner of Nigeria just recently. And we talked about FAPSA. And she said, speak about what you're knowledgeable about. And what's more knowledgeable than your own self and what you're familiar with. But from a personal growth perspective, I'll have you know that I was one of the students who's come from a parents with 8 siblings, poor as ever. I walked into ML Sultan Technikon with my current wife, then girlfriend. She registered, mind you, she was registered for public health. And coincidentally, I had my certificate, my metric certificate with me, and I took a walk to the accounting fraternity. Because with 4 E's, 1 B and 1 C, that's something, right? Your niche area is accounting and maths. So I walked into the accounting fraternity, and I saw this PA, and she looked at my certificate, and then there's a lecturer that came through. And he looked at me and says, he looked at the certificate and said, but why are you here? You need to be in university. I said, no, you know what? It's impossible because there's too many kids at home. My dad basically cannot make it to put us through studies. And as I sat in this hall, I watched him speaking to other lecturers. With my busway in my pocket, I walked out a registered student of ML Sultan Technikon. And that's exactly what one small seed that was planted at that time, not even knowing what that individual would do for us, but today he's sitting with a PhD, mind you. I mean, that's like something, right? And of course, thanks to UKZN as well for the fee remission. And I get disturbed when policymakers in the universities currently, all of you seated here, try to tweak our conditions of service and reduce things. It irks me because you want to give more and you want to benefit society. And you'll see that more and more. All right, so in this case, you'll see the effects on siblings. So I'm now able to work, I'm able to provide for my siblings, spending more, government getting more in VAT income, and it's a kind of a ripple effect. Next slide. Therein you get what is called societal regeneration. And this is building a knowledge economy where one moves from poverty to average, and at sometimes when universities get it right, creating an entrepreneur that can actually encourage and develop the country and employ folk. The effects on your immediate family, you suddenly, like I said, when I mentioned earlier, fee remission. I'm able to study, I'm working, my kids are able to study, they earn more, the government is getting more income. Everything is a kind of it's kind of growing in a way that we're not really seeing. And then my final point, and this was also touched on by the CFO and it's covered in my dissertation, that generational growth. Just picture this. You take somebody from a poverty-stricken household, you graduate them, you're shifting them, you're shifting their kids, you're shifting the grandkids, and you're creating this generational wealth for the next 50 years. And in my dissertation, I talk of government sacrificing and talking about radical transformation, where you pump money into the system. And then one of the speakers just showed, I think it was the UJ gentleman, who just showed that, sadly, NSFAS is getting funding cuts. I mean, why? We have to ask the questions, why? When you could see that higher education is the one mechanism that would benefit society in a massive way and the country. Next slide, please. All right, so rather controversial in a way, but if you kind of think about it, imagine a system where NRF could focus on masters and PhDs, where they can focus on Saatchi chairs, developing research, getting your accredited researchers A, B, and C rated, focus on that, and let NSFAS deal with up to honors. That 7,000 student that I mentioned that dropped out, you suddenly will keep them in the system. And if you look at the bottom one, when we talk about the UKZN case study, UKZN is one of the few universities, I stand to be corrected, but we have the master's and PhD that is fully funded. You get full fee remission. And how are we able to sustain that? And if we can sustain it, why can't other universities? What that does is when you look at this system, you'll say to yourself, okay, so if honors is covered with an NSFAS student, deserving, mind you, doing well in school, in classroom, producing the goods, academic record, excellent, deserve to be a postgraduate student, come through the system, come through the ranks, and you suddenly end up with a PhD. Okay, the next slide. So we talk about policy shifts, right? And yeah, you want to talk about using AI. People mentioned AI and data management tools to make informed decisions. So this research that I spoke about earlier, if policymakers look at the research and the data that's produced from that research and the recommendations and conclusions, you then shift policy and change the mindsets of individual decision makers. When you look at revitalizing the funding model, just imagine a cohort analysis where earlier the guy from SMD spoke about this situation about students giving their laptops away for 500 Rand. That's a reality, right? So there's this concept of entitlement that we need to guard against as well. And in talking about a hybrid of funding, when we look at business unusual. It's talking about funding that can cater for all students and not sort of disaggregate them into quintiles and all of that stuff. Yes, it should be free higher education. In fact, I'm going to go to a next discussion about free higher education. When you fund all deserving students, that's like saying build the economy. Because when you build the economy, in a matter of 4 or 5 years, you'd get growth like you cannot believe. If it means taking a loan from World Bank, do it. If it means generating income from every university sector, every private sector in the country, do it. And that's how we'll get this growth going. And that SARS commissioner, and I know colleagues from DIET are here, colleagues from NISFAS are here. There's a section in the SARS thing about bursaries and scholarship and private funding. So private organizations get some kind of benefit, tax deduction. But seriously, try reading a SARS statement. You need 5 PhDs and you still won't get it. It's complicated as hell, right? And what we need to do is get the minister to engage the SARS commissioner and say, what can we do to keep things simple? If a parent is producing and sponsoring a child, should that not be tax deductible? If it's tax deductible, it builds income within that household. That student then graduates. If you're giving a loan to a student and that loan is being repaid, you won't have a debt situation. You'd say that SARS is actually giving you a benefit to pay that loan. And what better way to generate more and more graduates in the system? And I'm coming back to that Henry Ford, which I closed my dissertation with. It's like saying, if you always do what you've done, you'll always get what you got. And that's my bank account, because it's static for a while now. And when I was writing this to you guys, I'm realizing this is exactly it. And now I come to the role of you, and many of the speakers actually spoke about this, right? The role of every single one of you seated here. And you got to just absorb this for a second. It's like saying a student passed your door, and you are the ones that created that seed that we talked about. You are the ones that planted that seed. You are the ones that gave that opportunity. Somebody spoke about hope. You are the ones that did that and created this avenue for that individual to walk down a graduation ceremony. So my hats out to every single one of you for doing that, and your impact on every single student that passed your door. It's absolutely massive. You don't know this, but if you search an alumni report and see where students are today, they passed your door when they had nothing in their hand. And today, they are somebody. And to DIET and to NISFAS and to every single one of you, this is really something that can actually change this entire country. And I think every single one of you deserve a round of applause. And then I think you can give me a round of applause. I've come to the end. Thank you.
Yeah, when we speak, I think we speak the facts in terms of what we experience, and I think that's great about this, that we can have so many different role players coming in and giving us a different perspective that technically just leads us to the same kind of destination, and that means that something needs to be done. But the beauty of that is that there is hope. So don't despair. There is indeed hope. So thank you so much for that sobering message. I think while you were doing, and I had a bit of a struggle understanding, what the meaning actually entails. And it says, deserving, worthy of being treated in a particular way, but typically of being given assistance. So I think that says a lot. Sometimes you have someone in front of you and you have to make a minute decision to determine whether the decision should be in favor or not. based on the fact that you would like to assist. And I'm sure all of you have that feeling that that person is just waiting for you or someone just to give them that last bit of hope because you might be their last resort. And then you have to send them away and say, unfortunately, I can't. But let us remember this part of worthiness that speaks about, you know, the determination of still transferring. And if I can recall a word that our late SU Vice Chancellor said, or Vice Chancellor and Rector said, he says, when somebody enters your space, you need to ensure that whether you give them a positive or a negative, let them just leave then with their dignity still in place. Because remember, the students are not a disturbance in our day of business. They're the very reason why we are here. So sometimes we just need that thought pattern to be adjusted so that we can find a way of saying, why are we still doing what we are doing? Not just for the sake of, you know, getting a paycheck. And I heard the message about the bank balance, by the way. But it's really that we are contributing to a cause that is much greater than us. We're changing destinies. And I think you should be proud of yourself. But let me not get philosophical. Let me come back to earth. Thank you so much for your contribution. I think at this part, we will go to another speaker, Ms. Bushle Mesezani. Is she here? All right. Thank you so much. You're going to just pick up where our previous speaker left, and you're going to give us the view around, you know, how do we make this thing work? Ne? Thriving student living. You know, that's also important. So let us give her a hand and welcome her to the stage. Come on, colleagues, you can do better than that.
Afternoon, everyone. Yeah, it's a big room. Thank you so much. So that was just my bio to just quickly introduce myself. I'll be very quick. My name is Bushle Mesezani, a stakeholder manager for Thrive Student Living. So first and foremost, before I start, I would like to say thank you to the FAPSA team, the president, and mostly acknowledge Google. If it wasn't for the collaboration that I had with Google in the past 10 years while I was at Study Trust as a bursary administrator, I wouldn't be here today. So really, really appreciate you. Can you please start? And the next one. All right, so as student residents, who are we as Thrive Student Accommodation? Why are we here today? Year in, year out, students in South Africa have a challenge when it comes to student accommodation. Some even get to a point where they sleep in bridges, they sleep in libraries, because our institutions cannot cater for everyone. So the whole aim of me being here today is to shape when it comes to student accommodation, mostly in the private residences. As much as they can get funding, either from NSFAS, privately funded or bursary funded, but there is a limit to it. Number one, they don't know which accommodation is accredited, right? The institution will have a whole list, but how do I know this one is safe? This one is close to university, and actually, is it conducive enough for me to study as a student? Thank you. The next one. So Broadpoint Properties currently, I know most people know Broadpoint. It owns the properties that we have as Thrive Student Living. We currently have 10,200 beds located between the three major universities, which is UJ, VETS, and UCT. So we are the largest listed company in RIT. Obviously, partnering with us, you can know your money is safe, number one. As said, properties are located between the three major institutions, and all of them are a walking distance to the institution. That's our model of our businesses. We accommodate any funding source, whether it's private, it's NSFAS, or it's actually bursary funded students, also with international students. So all of our residences are purpose-built student accommodation. It's meant for students. We accommodate both males and females, not in the same room, but it can be in the same floor. We do offer psychosocial support because we know the importance of having psychosocial support within our buildings. That's why we are a purpose-built student accommodation. A bit of background on who we are. So most of our properties can be known by their names. We actually acquired properties in 2021 from a company called the Finstra Group. So as a business with GrowPoint, as Thrive Student Living, we are actually rebranding ourselves. Most of you may have known Finstra, which is the operator that was owning these properties. So we came in 2021. We purchased 5 buildings from the Finstra Group. All of those buildings now belong to GrowPoint Properties. So we've been growing at a very steady pace, and currently from next year, beginning of 2025, we would have 14 properties. Thank you. Some amenities that we have within our buildings, obviously for students, Wi-Fi, it's oxygen. We have 24-hour security because we know safety is very crucial. So we're not some big room of hamangmang where students need to come stay. We know the importance of safety in our buildings, and these are some of the amenities that we have. I'm not going to dwell much on them, but you are more than welcome to have a look at our properties online as well. So we, as mentioned, that we service the 3 major institutions. There are also private colleges that we take care of, including Edivos and Stadio. So in Pretoria, we have 6 properties that are currently run by us. And then for Wits University, we have 1 property that is currently available for students, but beginning of 2025 would have 2 more. The Ateria one is specifically focusing on medical students. So each and every time when we add a building in our property, we look at the need, what is there. So the Ateria one looks at having extra laundry for students, because we know with medical students, they can't put their normal laundries with the scrubs and everything like that. So that's our specific model. Then for the University of Johannesburg, I'm actually glad the University of Johannesburg, as a finance manager or something, mentioned that they house 18,000 in private accommodation, and we are one of them. So yes, for UJ, we have 4 properties, and we also house students from AFTA. UCT, we currently have 1 building. Because of the area in UCT, it's not a walking distance compared to the other institutions, but we're literally next to one of the UCT residences where there's a Jamie shuttle that passes next to our building. A bit of a video that will show you what our properties look like. Best believe that's our properties for real. It's not just pictures, by the way. Thank you. All right, so what do we mean when we say we're building accommodation built for student success? I'm actually glad when the president was speaking right now, what is our purpose? So for us, it's not just getting that rental. For us, it's making sure that when a student comes and stay in a Thrive Student Living accommodation, by the moment they leave our building, they're employable graduates. We can't be housing someone's child for 4 years and they've got nothing to take home, or they are busy adding +1s because they feel they've got that flexibility because they're in a private accommodation. That's not us. Thank you. So how do we define student success in university as Thrive Student Living? Number 1, they need to be academically competent. For the fact that they made it to university, it means they are. Financial support, that's where the financial administrators that we work directly with come in, with processing all those payments, or they are bursary funded. But then if the university can't house the students, there comes us with a conducive residence. But what does a conducive residence need to have? Number 1, sense of belonging. We are housing students that come from different provinces and come to Joburg for the first time, maybe from Limpopo or even KwaZulu. I've never seen such a big city in my life, so it's very confusing for students, mostly for international students. So sense of belonging, it's very quite crucial for these students. Physical and mental well-being, we make sure that students within our buildings are well taken care of. As much as, yes, we are getting that rental each and every month, but we need to know the individual student that comes in and out of their buildings. We can tell when they're happy, we can tell when they are sad. Then certain skills that they need to have, they might get the, I mean, that's what they are there for, but there are certain skills that they need to learn as an individual now. How do they go back to their society and be still respectful with that degree on their hands? Thank you. What do we mean when we say we offer more than just a bed? So I've already touched on some of these things, specifically when it comes to security of the buildings. But one thing that I want to emphasize on is each and every property within Thrive Student Living has a support. So we have what we call the house mother, similar to university, because one thing with students, when they start staying in private residence, they think they don't form part of the university structure. They feel alienated somehow. So we're trying to bridge that gap. We have student life managers that stay with the students 24 hours in our properties. So in the middle of the night when they come back from groove, or because now they started getting into relationships, they want to cry or they want to commit suicide, that's the person that takes care of the students throughout the year. Then we have a maintenance manager. Often in residences, specifically student accommodation, they'll say, yeah, we have a manager, but they're relating to the maintenance manager. So for us, those are two different people. Maintenance looks at the maintenance of the building. Student life manager is the mother to those students while they're away from home. Then we have customer liaison officers and student life interns. That are very own students that stay with us in our buildings to curate the programs that I'm gonna take you through now. Next slide. So, one of the biggest things for us as Thrive Student Living, what makes us different from our competitors? So we have what we call the Student Life Program, similar to university offering, and we're not trying to replace you colleagues, please, don't get me wrong. But we try to imitate what is on the student university side, so that students still feel like they're a big part of that community. Number one, we look at the well-being, the academic, physical, life after graduation, social, and community. So we have a program throughout the year. Each and every month, we'll be tackling different programs. If it's mental health month, similar to now, cancer awareness, we bring certain people to come and facilitate those sessions and workshops to our very own students. Hence, I spoke about those skills that they will have to acquire. For the beginning of 2024, we've actually introduced our very own psychologist on sites. As much as we do work with the universities to refer students, but we know there's not enough support. There's a lot. Students are a lot, and the universities don't have enough resources. So we have hired our own psychologists that will work together with our student life manager to assist students when it comes to their mental well-being. So these are some of the institutions that we actually house their students within our properties, and we make sure that we collaborate and strengthen those relationships as Thrive Student Living. And these are some of our biggest bursary providers that also have students that stay in our buildings. And that is it. Thank you. I don't know if there's any questions. If they are.
Thank you so much. That was very inspiring. We have time for questions now. First time that anybody actually say questions, so I'm going to take it. Any questions, colleagues? Okay, that's a good one.
Okay. So we cater to different diverse groups. For the fact that we house NSFAS students, that means our properties start from 5,000. Yes. Per month, and only for students. We don't allow students, anyone that is not a student within our property. Hence, when they apply to Thrive, we would want a proof of registration and also confirm with the institution that they are indeed registered.
Not amongst ourselves.
Yeah, let's ask the questions here, colleagues.
She's the only one that can answer
Can-
the question, not your colleague.
Can we have a show of hands? Are there questions? If you can raise your hand, I'm sure.